At least 427 species of mammals live in the Amazon rainforest, but one now dominates in terms of raw numbers: the cow. Cattle farming accounts for up to 80% of deforested land. In 2018, Brazil exported some $6 billion worth of beef, more than any other country in history. While stringent supply chain standards make Europe a difficult market for Amazon producers, countries in Africa and Asia, particularly China, are less discerning. The law requires small farmers to maintain 80% of the forest on their land, but the penalties do not deter livestock farming. Oliveira, the rancher in União Bandeirantes, cannot legally sell his cattle owing to embargoes placed by the environmental regulator. Instead, he sells animals at a discount to a middleman, who sells them to Friggin, the biggest slaughterhouse in the state, without a problem. Slaughterhouses often turn a blind eye to the source of cattle that arrives via third parties, a state of affairs the owner of Friggin, João Goncalves, happily admits exists. Striding confidently around his vast plant as a line of cow carcasses is gutted by white-clothed employees on his production line, Goncalves talks with a lifetime of certainty about the benefits of expansion into the Amazon. His slaughterhouse will soon be the biggest in Brazil, according to the company, killing a cow every 8 seconds. His company exports nearly 40,000 tons of beef each year to Hong Kong, Egypt, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Switzerland, and Denmark. Throughout the industry, accountability is scarce. The Brazilian company JBS, a global leader in beef production, has been fined millions of dollars for buying cattle from farms under embargo. American agribusinesses Bunge and Cargill are among the largest players in the export of 14.9 million tons of soy from the Amazon annually, used primarily as a livestock feed. They have also been fined millions for sourcing soy from off-limits areas. For at least some working in the Amazon, the environment is simply irrelevant. We came here to open up this region, so now let's leave it? It's not logical, is it? Asks Goncalves, the slaughterhouse owner. We came here to deforest, to clean, he adds. In the next 100 years, the Amazon will all be open. It's a matter of time, right? Yet the consequences are now becoming apparent even to some of Bolsonaro's supporters in União Bandeirantes. Oliveira, the rancher, says the stream at the bottom of his land has dried up. On the eastern edge of the Amazon, shrubland has emerged. And in deforested areas in the south, temperatures rose at more than double the global average. With tens of billions of trees already gone, the region is warming fast. Droughts and floods are more common, and the dry season has grown by 6 days per decade since 1980. Trees play a crucial role in putting water back into the atmosphere, and their absence means less rainfall and higher temperatures. Carlos Nobra and Thomas Lovejoy, leading authorities on the Amazon and climate change, believe all of it, deforestation, the fires lit by ranchers that spread hundreds of meters through forest, and the impact of global temperature rises, might soon push the rainforest past its tipping point. Current projections by the UN show the Earth heading for heating of up to 5 degrees Celsius this century, far higher than the 2 degrees Celsius assumed by Nobra's research. If that happens, that forest will be lost forever. In 10 or 20 years, we will make a final diagnosis, says Nobra. If this process continues, it becomes irreversible. The forces set in play in the Amazon could have serious global consequences. The forest stores up to 120 billion metric tons of carbon, equivalent to almost 12 years of global emissions at current rates. If cleared, much of that will go into the atmosphere. That alone could push the global climate beyond safe limits. The Amazon tipping point could also lead to a cascade of other potential climate tipping points. Forest dieback is strongly interconnected with other phenomena such as the melting of the Greenland ice sheet, which would cause sea levels to rise, and the degradation of frozen soil in the Arctic known as the permafrost, which would release greenhouse gases held in the ice as well as long-dormant diseases. Scientists believe that these changes combined could result in runaway global warming that humans would find impossible to reverse. To avoid the worst-case scenario, the heart of the Amazon must be spared. Although 19.8% of the 1.5 million square mi of the Brazilian rainforest has been conquered, mostly along its south and east, swaths of the west and center remain intact. But that might soon change. From the vanquished terrain of Rondônia, a decaying highway roves north into the forest. The BR-319 bisects the Purus-Madeira Basin, one of the most preserved parts of the forest, where wildlife such as nocturnal two-toed sloths, woolly monkeys and taijo lizards live undisturbed. The military inaugurated the highway in 1973 to connect Porto Velho, the capital of Rondônia, with Manaus, the largest city in the Amazon. Yet within a few years, the 550-mile road fell into disrepair, reclaimed by grass and weeds. Jaguars and anacondas would cross the asphalt, flecked with meter-wide potholes and rusting road signs. Now the BR-319 is stirring again. On this road lies Realidade, which frontiersman Bertola has called home for the past 6 years. There, the lumberyards are opening fast and the telltale fishbone tracks already mark the jungle. Today, Realidade has 21 evangelical churches and 3 chainsaw repairmen. It is a harsh life in the midst of the forest. The newly arrived face the threats of malaria, deadly snakes, and persistent torrential rain. At times it feels like the forest is fighting back against the invasion. Everyone who comes up this road comes with a dream to find wealth, Bertola says with a sigh. Here, they only find suffering. But we do not desist. Bertola, like around 5,000 fellow travelers in recent years, moved in anticipation that the BR-319 would be repaved. But, despite much debate, nothing was done, and the road deteriorated. In July, Bolsonaro committed to repaving the highway with all certainty. But paving the road will transform the geography of deforestation by creating easy access to an area of forest bigger than Germany and Holland combined, according to Philip Fernside, a professor at the National Institute of Amazonian Research. Fernside co-authored a recent study that shows paving the road and another highway, the AM364, would lead to a 277% increase in deforestation in the region by 2050. This highway will accelerate us toward the tipping point because it cuts in half a very rich water basin and an area of high biological value, says Ricardo Mello, head of the World Wildlife Fund's Amazon program. But if the worst happens, it will be felt first by those forging livelihoods on the frontier. The decline in rainfall would parch farmland and cause widespread drought. Lower river levels would have a knock-on effect on boat transport, the fishing industry, and hydroelectric power generation. If the tipping point is reached, the Amazon's economy would be largely destroyed. But the wheels of expansion continued turning unabated. In February, near the foot of the BR-319, not far from where the asphalt turns to dust, the piercing sound of drills rings out over the forest. The metal frame of a new slaughterhouse is already taking shape next to the road. In the Carapunas Reserve, the once distant hum of chainsaws and gunshots grows louder. Katika worries every day about the future. The invaders, she says, do not understand that they are in a place that is not their own. But it is the prospects facing her grandchildren that worry her most. She cannot imagine a future for them without the forest. The tribal lands are her world, she says. As the sun glows through the branches in a clearing near her village, and spider monkeys scamper in the canopy above, her eyes remain alive with defiance. If I die, she says, I die here.
Wildlife initially implied non-trained creature species. It presently incorporates all plants, parasites, and different organic entities which develop or live wild in a space without being presented by humans. Domesticating wild plant and creature species for human advantage has happened ordinarily all around the planet. It has hugely affected the climate, both positively and negatively. Wildlife can be found in all biological systems. Deserts, forests, rainforests, plains, grasslands, and different regions, including the most developed urban destinations, all have particular types of wildlife. Most researchers concur that wildlife around is impacted by human exercises. A nursery is certainly not a characteristic environment. However, it is loaded with wildlife. Why is wildlife important? Wildlife keeps up with balance in environments. Each living thing is associated. Assuming even only one living being becomes compromised or terminated, it has a cascading type of influence on a whole biological system. It disturbs the well-established pecking order, sending shockwaves through the climate. It's additionally essential to realize that dangers to species seldom occur in separation. The things that undermine, say, bumblebees likewise compromise different pollinators. For environments to flourish, all wildlife should be secured. Diversity implies better environments. While talking about wildlife, you'll regularly hear the expression biodiversity. This alludes to the number of species in an environment. Sound biological systems have a ton of variety. For what reason is this significant? Think about plants. A wide assortment of plants implies more prominent efficiency and better well-being. Assuming there are fewer plant species, an infection that influences them spreads quicker and all the more viably. More assortment implies better obstruction. Wildlife gives nutrients to people. All that we eat comes from either a creature or plant initially. While we don't eat as much wildlife as we used to because the food inventory network has become so modern, yields and animals were wildlife at a certain point. Many individuals rely upon wildlife for their food, too. Without an assortment of food sources, our nourishment endures. Ensuring wildlife and regular environments and food security all over the planet. We can likewise further develop nourishment by getting back to all the more wild food sources and enhancing our weight control plans. A lot of medication comes from wildlife. People have consistently gone to nature for medication. Numerous clinical frameworks, like Chinese customary medication, depend on spices, flavors, and then some. However, even drugs wouldn't be the place where they are today without wildlife. Medications like morphine, penicillin, and ibuprofen were obtained from wild plants. Securing wildlife and their natural surroundings means fewer illnesses that influence people. The safeguarding of wildlife and where they reside is significant for human well-being. Research shows that in assorted, insured, and normal regions, there are fewer examples of jungle fever and Lyme infection. 60% of irresistible illnesses, counting COVID-19, come from animals. Closeness to animals builds the dangers for infections evolving and a jumping species. By ensuring territories, people, and wildlife don't need to live so near one another. Individuals rely upon wildlife for their vocations. For some individuals, wildlife is their fundamental kind of revenue. As per the World Economic Forum, $44 trillion, the greater part of the world's GDP, is attached to nature. In the Global South, 1.6 billion individuals rely upon timberlands. All around the world, 3/4 occupations rely upon water. As wildlife and their living spaces recoil, positions are lost. Wildlife has social importance. The effect wildlife has on culture can't be disregarded. The presence of animals and plants has consistently impacted things like strict convictions and food. In numerous native gatherings, sage is an indispensable spice for strict functions. For adherents of Hinduism, elephants and cows are hallowed images. Local dishes made with nearby fixings protect memory and custom while likewise uniting networks. To keep culture and customs alive, it's essential to ensure wildlife. Wildlife is significant for the economy. Wildlife preservation regions and safeguarded regular living spaces draw in guests from everywhere in the world. Many spots rely upon wildlife for the travel industry, which makes up more than 10% of the world's GDP. Nations like Brazil, Australia, Kenya, and more are particularly subject to the travel industry. Without wildlife, the economy of numerous nations would endure essentially. Securing wildlife creates more positions. Talking about the economy, wildlife protection likewise creates more positions. For instance, a major preservation and reasonable administration project in Honduras made north of 8,000 positions and raised local area pay levels by more than 300%. As indicated by research from Heidi Peltier, an exploration teacher and master in work in the U.S. economy, protection and park improvement make a larger number of positions than oil and gas altogether. The formation of agrina positions prompts a more feasible and useful economy. Being around wildlife and nature is great for emotional wellness. There's a worldwide psychological wellness emergency. Proof shows that nature can help. Individuals who live near indigenous habitats and wildlife are viewed as more dynamic, genuinely amazing, and better. In one task in the UK, volunteers with poor emotional wellness went to a park in nature strolls and protection work. Following 12 weeks, they revealed feeling much improved. To ensure our emotional wellness, we want to secure wildlife and the environments they live in. What are the benefits of wildlife? Wildlife gives many advantages to nature and human beings as well. They give food, shelter, wood, and many other resources for human life. They also help in reducing global warming by managing greenhouse gas. What is the largest forest in the world? The Amazon is undoubtedly one of the largest forests and wildlife in the world. It is not only one of the biggest forests but also home to various species that are currently living on our Earth. Where is Amazon forest? The Amazon forest is the largest and spreads across 8 developing countries, including Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, and Suriname. Wildlife, like trees, is also a domestic asset that not only helps to maintain the ecological balance but also benefits from financial, recreational, and aesthetic points of perspective. There was a time when the number of wild animals was quite large when human interference was minimum and there was no issue with their safety or conservation. But, with the development of farming, settlement, industrial and other development activities, and primarily due to man's greed, the number of wild animals gradually decreased and decreased. As a consequence, several animal species have become extinct and several are on the brink of being so. The Wildlife Conservation Essay is an insight into the requirements of conserving wildlife globally. While the world's nations must be very specific in terms of wildlife conservation, the amount of wildlife is diminishing day by day. The World Wildlife Fund is a global organization that does a praiseworthy job of encouraging wildlife protection. National agencies are also involved in wildlife conservation.